It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Where am I calling you from? Where are you based?
I'm in New York, Long Island, New York.
Nice one.
So it's the beauty of technology.
It's incredible. I have been all around the States today. I cannot believe it. I've been to Ohio, Portland, Michigan, Virginia, Florida. It's hysterical.
That's beautiful. So I'll just get started here. This is Ted Hicks from Late Night Parents. We have a special guest for our show, Miss Elaine Halligan. So much to be said about today with technology, how it deals with parenting, and every once in a while with Late Night Parents, we do get parenting experts. I know a lot of times we receive experts that are entrepreneurs or authors or all the above, but it's great to have a parenting expert here. So you're going to fix all my problems with my kids. Right?
How old are your kids, Ted?
The kids are 11 and 17. Son is 11, daughter just turned 17.
I can tell you, the positive parenting skills I teach work on all ages, and they are magical on my eldest, and he's just turned 56. But that is my husband.
Of course. We'll get to know about in my child's different the parenting expert Elaine Halligan, and she shares her true story about her son Sam, who from the age of 7 was excluded from 3 schools and was later labeled with a whole host of conditions, from autistic spectrum disorder to pathological demand avoidance, and finally being diagnosed with dyslexia. Sam became the alphabet kid, but his family never gave up on him. So Elaine, would love to, as I said before, thank you so much for joining us. I will decrease and allow you to decrease and tell you your story.
Wow. Well, you've given me such a great introduction. Thank you, Ted. So the book I've written, My Child's Different, does tell the true story. It's a human interest story about my boy Sam, who I have to say is now a young adult. He's 23. But indeed, he had a very tricky start to life. Shall I go back to the beginning, Ted, and kind of take you back to the nursery days? Would that help?
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
So before I do that, it was just to say that the book came about because Sam had a very, very, very difficult start to life. And as you say, by the age of 7, having been expelled from 3 schools, all I can say is his sense of self-worth was completely shattered. And the book we've written is about what we can do as parents to help kids who, like Sam, may be atypical learners. That's what I call dyslexics and other specific learning difficulties. They just learn differently. Or they may be more neurodiverse. But all of us as parents, Ted, just want one thing for our kids. We just want them to develop into thriving, resilient adults. What do we want? For a 17-year-old, do you want him? Is it a boy?
My daughter is 17. My son is 11.
So you just want your daughter to be able to go out into the adult world and maximize her potential and unlock her strengths. And that was what we had to do over the last 15 years because Sam effectively was written off in society. It started off at nursery school. And I kind of sensed that something wasn't right. My gut told me that he was different, but it was amazing how many people would say to me, Elaine, you're worrying about nothing.
Okay.
He's just a boy.
Elaine, I have to stop you for a second because other parenting experts I've had on in the past with our show or I've interviewed on our website have told me he's a boy. He's going to do different things. He's going to have bursts of energy. He's going to run all over the place because I could tell you for one, my son, when he was growing up, he was bouncing all over the furniture. I mean, it was to the point where I was like, oh my goodness, and do we need and I'm going to say this, and a lot of people might get upset, but I thought for a minute, I said, does he need medication? Does he need to calm down?
Because he's high energy. Yeah.
Right.
And it's so early to say because, if we're going to gender stereotype, we can say that boys tend to, and I'm generalizing, have more energy. So it's really difficult for parents to work out what's normal behavior and what's abnormal. But I would say that the journey for us was slightly different because at nursery school, the nursery teacher would meet me and greet me at the school gate, and it would always be the royal we. Ted, it was always, we haven't had a good day.
Oh.
It was always, and he was kind of given the kind of detention card, age 3. And I'd be told, Mrs. Halligan, he doesn't listen. Okay, but lots of 3-year-olds don't listen.
No.
He doesn't share. He's pushing the other children and is quite aggressive. It's impossible for him to stand in line. He needs so much attention, constant attention. He is quick to anger. He's high energy. And so really quickly, Ted, what happened was Sam became labeled as the naughty one. He was labeled by, I guess, teachers, by children around him. And guess what we did? We punished him. We punished him for behavior, not realizing for a long time that actually it was behavior he couldn't help. And I hold a lot of guilt about that.
Okay.
But we did lots of things that just didn't bring out the best in Sam. Why? We didn't understand him.
So at any point was there, and I know I'm jumping ahead, but I have.
No, fine, go ahead.
At any point did like a school psychologist step in to say, Sam needs to be reevaluated, or any of that type of evaluation happen?
Well, what happened was when he left nursery aged 5, he went to his first public school, and after about 9 months, the headmaster called us into his office, and he said, we're having problems with Sam's behavior. He said, I think you need to migrate to our autistic unit. And there it was. There was the big A word, not from a psychologist, not from a psychiatrist, but from a head teacher who is not in the position to diagnose. And I remember being in that meeting with the head teacher and saying absolutely nothing. Anyone who knows me, Ted, knows I'm not short of a word or two. But in that meeting, I said nothing. It was like a bomb had just hit. No one had mentioned the A word to me before. And for him to have said, I think Sam's autistic, was just so wildly off the mark. But it announced kind of the start of our journey of going down what I call the kind of plethora of diagnostic labels. And that was when Sam became the alphabet kid, because very quickly professionals got involved, and he just had, if I say TLA, it means 3-letter abbreviation.
Okay.
Yeah? He had TLAs after TLA after TLA. And it started with, we think he could be Asperger's, and he could be on the autistic spectrum. So let's throw in a label of ASD, which we didn't think was accurate. Then we were told, we think he could be ADD, attention deficit disorder. And then, by the way, he's definitely got SID, SID, sensory integration dysfunction.
Yes.
And let's throw in ODD, oppositional defiance disorder. And the day he got given PDA, and PDA is not public displays of affection.
Okay.
PDA, sorry, I can laugh about it now a little bit, but PDA is pathological demand avoidance. And that was the day I came home and just cried. I just wept. I cried. I felt completely exhausted. I felt overwhelmed. And I started awfully to feel resentful of my son, because he was just taking up so much time and we didn't know what to do.
Okay.
And I don't know whether any parent listening kind of feels like that, but we were really in a state of despair.
Elaine, I have to jump in here and say, initially, when you mentioned that your son was evaluated or they misdiagnosed as autistic, that would have hit me as a ton of bricks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sure it hit you. And so many parents nowadays, when their children are labeled or misdiagnosed or evaluated, you mentioned something really truthful when you say the first thing we do is punish them. Oh, we're going to take this away, and we're going to take that away, and you're not doing this, and you don't have access to that. Without sitting down to really sit there and talk with the child and try to get their viewpoint.
That is so insightful, Ted. And that is exactly what we need to do as parents, because we didn't realize that all Sam's behavior was not him being a problem. He wasn't being a problem. He was having a problem because he had specific learning needs. So to punish a child for specific learning needs is just one of the cruelest things we can ever do. And there is always a reason for misbehavior. And once you get to know the story, I would say the story is almost always heartbreaking. And there's always a reason. So my kind of first top tip for your listeners is always be curious. Just be curious. Children don't want to misbehave. They really often want to just get things right and be part of the gang and to get lots of positive affirmations. So when a child misbehaves, there is always a reason, and the main reason is usually, I'm generalizing, but it's usually that they're overwhelmed with feeling and emotion. Their emotional backpack is just overflowing.
I got to ask you, in this process, just the struggle to get Sam an education, because that's what a child deserves. I mean, was there a specific point? I mean, you could explain to us, our listeners, the difficult or your lowest moment. But my first question is, I know you're in the UK and I'm here in the US, but is there some type of individualized education program? Like in the U.S., we have like IEPs when it's a document that's generated with, a child is in a public school and they potentially might need special education. Some type of document that's going to give your child accommodation.
So it's exactly the same here. It's exactly the same. When a child has special needs, they need an individual education plan. And they also need something called an EHC plan, which is emotional health and care plan that follows them round. And it's meant to be a multidisciplinary approach with people from health and education and other sectors getting together as a multidisciplinary team to ensure the child meets their targets. It's a wonderful framework in principle, but in practice, let me tell you what happens is our schools are not adequately set up to cope with learning difficulty children. We really struggle, and I think we need specialist environments. Many of us as parents want our children to be integrated into mainstream school, but for Sam, he could not cope in mainstream school. We needed a specialist school, and in the UK, specialist provision it's very, very hard to find. You'll either get specialist schools for children with what I call severe or moderate learning difficulties, but Sam's profile of dyslexia is what's called a specific learning difficulty. And technically, these children should well be able to cope at a mainstream public school. But his dyslexia was so severe, he really needed specialist teaching. And so the book goes into the fight we had with the very people who are meant to be providing education for our children. We had to go into legal battle to try and get our local authority, who is responsible for education, to provide Sam with the education that absolutely he craved for and that he needed. And it was a long fight, but we just didn't give up. And I think I was a tiger mother in a way. I just admit that I just wanted to do anything I could to get my little boy in an educational environment where he was going to thrive. And I think a lot of listeners listening to this will absolutely get that overwhelming desire to do the right thing. Most of us as parents, most of us don't give up on our children.
Oh, of course not. We're the ones that are going to be, we're the first and last line of defense.
Yeah.
And specifically, mom is the first, last line of defense.
She can be, but it's a team effort. If you're lucky enough to be parenting together, it's a whole team effort. It's a whole united front, whether it's mom or whether dad's at home looking after children. But yeah, it's a deeply emotional battle, and I would say that getting your child into the right education environment, getting the right support with qualified teachers is one of the biggest battles we have here in the UK.
So we're speaking with Elaine Halligan, author of Is My Child Different? Tell us ways, Elaine, that how can parents raise a child's self-esteem?
Oh, great question.
Because there so many times when they're in school or when they're in some type of extracurricular activity and whatever issues they might be experiencing, that teacher or that coach is saying, oh, you're not doing it the right way, you're not following the instructions. And tell us about self-esteem from a parent's perspective.
So I want to answer this question in two parts, if I'm allowed, because we need to understand why it is that so many of us inadvertently criticize our children. And you kind of referred to that in terms of maybe teachers telling them what to do all the time. And then I'll go in to give you the skill of how to actually build up self-esteem. But in order to build up self-esteem, we need to know kind of what we're doing currently. I would say that in society we have something called a negativity bias. If you can just think about it with your own tweens and teens,
yes.
It's a simple fact that we notice what our kids get wrong.
It's true.
Yes?
It's so true.
Yeah. They come in from school, Ted, they hang their coat up, but they just dump their shoes and the book bag in the middle of the hallway floor. You ever had that?
Elaine, I really have to stop you because I think this discussion can go all day. I really think it could go all day because every day, I tell you, I walk in, my wife will say to me, Nehemiah did not hang up. I could tell that he's home because I see his shoes, his knapsack, his book bag, and I see his coat.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make it totally into the closet.
Yeah. So let's just imagine, Ted, that one day he does hang his coat up. Yeah? It gets into the closet. But the shoes and the book bag are still in the middle of the hallway floor. What do we notice?
We notice that he did it halfway, or we notice that he did it partially. We don't...
Yeah, but be honest, we notice the shoes, don't we? We notice the shoes, and we say, oh, for God's sake, Ted, why have you left your shoes in the middle of the floor again? It's not difficult.
It's
How
true.
many times do I have to tell you? I've even got a shoe box there for you. Will you put your shoes away?
Elaine, I had this conversation. I know you're in the UK. I'm in the US. We had this conversation 3 nights ago.
I know. I was a fly on the wall. So what we could say to our kids, even teens as well, is just, hey, Sam, do you know what? You've done one of the 3 things you need to do when you come in from school. Yeah, thank you. Your coat's in the right place. You are getting into better habits and behaviors. I wonder which thing you're going to do next.
I love the positive reinforcement.
Okay. So why do we notice the shoes and the book bag in the middle of the floor? It's because of something in our brain called the reticular activating system. I don't know whether you've heard of it, the RAS.
I have not.
It's really important that listeners understand this, because there's part of our brain that kind of searches for whatever it is we're currently focused on. So if we're focused on a clean, tidy house and getting our children into good habits and behaviors, we will notice the shoes in the middle of the hall. And we literally filter out what we think is not so important. I'll give you another example of this. If you're going to buy a new car, let's say Volkswagen Golf, you suddenly go onto Long Island and, oh my God, everyone's got Volkswagen Golfs. Actually, there's loads of people who've got them. Oh, that's interesting. I've never noticed that before, but there's loads of Golfs out. And you notice the paintwork and the wheel trim and the luxury pack, and is it diesel, electric, or petrol? I don't know what you're doing in New York, but we start to notice it more because our reticular activating system is focused on what we think is important. Now, in family life, the same thing happens. If your reticular activating system is focused on the fact that your son is, and forgive me, I'm just making this up, that your son is lazy or disorganized, you will spend your time with your reticular activating system commenting on all the stuff that illustrates that he's lazy and disorganized. There you go again. You've forgotten your rugby kit. Why didn't you bring it up back from school? I've told you it needs to be washed on a Thursday night. Or, well, I've told you before to pack your bag the night before. Why didn't you pack it the night before? And then we wouldn't be in such a rush in the morning. And so that negativity bias, unfortunately, means we come over as being inadvertently critical with our kids. Guess what happens next? They get fed up. They think we're nagging them.
Yes.
We're repeating. We're reminding. Oh, my God, there's Dad going off again. They get unmotivated. They lose self-esteem. And very quickly, family life becomes not so calm, not so harmonious, and we're just all either nagging or shouting at each other.
That's true.
And we're not actually spending time getting our children into better habits and behaviors. So
true. I like I said, I feel that, I don't know, either you have access to the cameras in my house to see what happens.
Those cameras are all public. They're all public.
So I want to share this with you and just go off topic. That, so I mentioned before that my daughter's 17. So growing up, little girl, hands always folded, dresses on, just everything was nothing was really extra was required. So then my son was born, it was just like the total opposite. And I was like, wow, this is really, and I couldn't understand the hands-on approach that we were going to have to take, with doing the homework, standing over and doing the homework, for the early part of the school semester. Now he's at the point where he's kicked into gear, and I there's just some things that I've learned from the two children, where they're, one is like day and one is like night. It requires additional, hands-on work, being right there, and the other is just kind of like, all right, I got it.
And that's because your children have different temperaments.
Yes.
And unless we understand our children's temperaments, we are never going to get the best out of them. So another tip here is that, with Sam, our son, it took me 7 years to understand his temperament.
Okay.
And he is very intense. So he feels anger, frustration, unfairness to a greater degree than other people. He's very sensitive and sensory, so he was sensitive to noise, smells, lights, and touch, which meant that he was incredibly fussy about his clothes and food. And the third thing is he was very impulsive. Oh, my God, he would go from 0 to 100 really quickly. So a kind of very explosive reaction and very high energy. And if you put all that together, It means we had a child with a temperament that was really challenging to parent. But the thing to think about temperament is that what may press your buttons in terms of, distractibility, let's say,
Okay.
may actually be a good trait to value as an adult, because if you're distractible, it means you've got good attention to detail. You know, the trait that they're high energy and always bouncing off the walls may be challenging in children, but it may be something that we value in adults, someone who's got a lot of energy. Someone who's fiercely independent, we may find it challenging as a child to have a child who wants to do everything themselves, but of course that's what we value in adults, someone who's independent and able to think for themselves. So I would say, you know, temperament plays a huge part, but we mustn't see all temperament as negative. And their biology is not their destiny. It's up to us to help teach and train into better habits and behaviors. But knowing your child's temperament allows you to understand their needs. And it could be that your son is easily distractible.
Yes, definitely.
It could be that he lacks focus.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that and I'm guessing all this, that he's curious about his environment, so, you know, loses his attention quickly. It could be that he finds it really challenging to sit at the homework table for half an hour because he needs a walking around break. It could be that because of his high energy, the wiggling and fidgeting he does, a real need to move constantly. It could be that he learns better his times table or his maths by wandering around the room and throwing a ball up and down. And unless we start understanding what our children's needs are, we are not going to be able to parent them effectively.
Hey, this is Late Night Parents. We're speaking with Elaine Halligan, author of My Child's Different. It's an inspiring success story that will offer hope to any parent and enables parents to unblock the potential in their children. We're getting ready to wrap up in a little bit, Elaine, because I know you're very busy. I know you're probably being interviewed coast to coast.
I am, but I have to tell you, I've got until 6:30, so it's totally your call, Ted.
Oh, okay, great. Then that's wonderful. So,
because I did want to, sorry to interrupt you, I did want to kick back to your question, which has a part 2, to how to raise self-esteem in children.
Oh, perfect.
Do you mind if we kick back in with that?
Yes.
Okay. So whether we're talking about toddlers, tweens, teens, or adults, a top tip for your parents listening is that you need to praise your children descriptively. There's too many of us in life at the moment praise evaluatively. Do you know what I mean by evaluative praise?
No, I don't. Share with me.
So the evaluative praise is me saying, Ted, you are just an awesome interviewer.
Oh, that is so wonderful. It makes me feel so much better.
Or I could say, I could be a bit more descriptive, and I could say, Ted, you know what? You've got the most warm, empathetic voice, and I can tell from the questions you're asking that you've really prepared for this meeting and read my book, and instantly you put me at ease at the start of this call. That's what makes you a good interviewer.
Well, I take both of your comments gracefully, but the second one, the latter one, it made me feel so much better and so much warmer.
So what we need to do is kind of not evaluatively praise our children. If you tell your 11 and 17-year-old they're amazing, they're brilliant, they're superstars, they're, you know, good boy, good girl, well done, I'm so proud of you, they will not believe that praise because it isn't descriptive enough.
True.
So we need to get really descriptive. So if your son keeps forgetting to bring his homework diary home, for example, instead of saying, oh my God, have you forgotten your homework diary again? You literally just say, hey, good for you. You've remembered to bring your homework diary home. You're becoming much more organized. I really appreciate that. For a little toddler, instead of saying, oh, for goodness sake, eat your green beans up. They're good for you. They make you strong. You liked them yesterday. Why aren't you eating them today? Instead, You could say, hey, I've seen you eating a couple of beans, even though I know you don't like them very much. Do you know what? That's really brave and cooperative. Good for you. Because when we pay attention to things, we get more of what we pay attention to, and we start to notice that, what we're focused on. But if we pay attention to what our kids get wrong, it doesn't motivate. So here's the deal. You need to look for effort. You need to look for attitude. You need to look for any progress your child makes and all those wonderful qualities and characteristics they have. So, I love the energy you've got. I love it that you can sustain, an hour and a half on the football pitch without wearing out. I love that energy. Or, you're sitting at the homework table at the right time with your books out. It looks as if you're about ready to start your homework. Good for you. As opposed to, oh my God, how long are you going to sit there staring into space before you start your homework? What a waste of time.
Oh my.
Is this a bit painful, Ted?
You're helping me re-educate myself, be a better leader, be a better parent, and that's the most important.
That is what we needed to do with Sam. He was written off in society, age 7. His self-esteem was shattered.
Yes.
And yet I just knew that I had a rock covered with mud. And I just knew that our job was to whittle back that mud to see what was underneath, because I knew my son had a moral compass. I knew he was a good person who was completely misunderstood. And I knew that our job was to try and find what was beneath all that mud. And all I can say is when the mud came back, when we got him into the right school, when we started to talk to him and listen to his feelings of inadequacy and failure, that was when the magic started to happen. And underneath the rock, we found a brilliant diamond.
So tell me this much, and we touched upon it briefly, but if your child struggles with written exams,
oh yeah,
from a parent's perspective, what can we do to help our children out? Because there's a lot of times when my son is about to take an exam, or let's say the next morning he's going to take an exam, and then that night we're making sure let's say the state exam is given, and the night before we're making sure you go to bed early, you wake up, you have your breakfast, I'm driving you to school, I'm trying to give the positive reinforcement, don't rush through this stuff, make sure you read the stuff out. But is there anything else from your perspective, Elaine, that we could be doing to our youth to help them? And because I know a lot of times parents take the other route of, you better focus, you better not go in there and screw up, that positive reinforcement is just gone.
Right. So the approach you're taking is spot on. It's the supportive approach. It's the empathetic approach. It's what we should all be doing as parents, which is setting up for success, which you're doing brilliantly. You're giving your children the opportunity to have a good night's sleep. You're supporting them in the morning by giving them a good breakfast. You may be helping them out that morning to reduce stress by getting them to school on time. But at the end of the day, we need to look at what your children's educational needs are. So the example I can give is Sam, who actually was so severely dyslexic, he can't read or write.
Okay.
And so he needed a reader and a scribe. And that's at the extreme end of the spectrum. So you need to get an educational psychology assessment to assess what his needs are in order to apply for that kind of dispensation. If your child is, let's say, got processing issues and is a slow reader or writer, it could be that the school could apply for extra time. And there's something in the UK where a lot of children with processing issues have 25% extra time, which can help them. Some students who have dyspraxia or fine motor control issues can apply to type up their exams with touch typing. So I think if you're talking about a child with specific learning needs, there's always something that can be done to help them access exams in the ways that I've described. But the most important thing is to get them into the right educational environment. With reference to your son, who may not have any specific learning needs, it could be that he just struggles to write exams, I don't know, because of his lack of focus and his distractibility. So the most important thing we can do is to help our children be happy learners. And that's all about reducing pressure and increasing creativity. And this is another big conversation that it may be for another time. But, you know, if our children are going to be happy learners, they need to know it's not just about achieving grades, passing exams, and obtaining qualifications.
That's so true.
You can have all that and still not be happy.
That's so true.
And if you want your children to be successful, I really urge parents to redefine what success looks like. Academically, on paper, our son Sam is unsuccessful. Really struggled through exams, but actually got enough to go to university. Managed to get through university with a reader and a scribe. But he's a young man today who's running his own business and has been doing for 5 years. And he is a problem solver. There are always ways around with voice recognition software, etc. But what he does have is he's had access to what I call the home curriculum. I'm not saying that schooling and education is not important. Please do not let schooling get in the way of your child's education, which must be much rounder. You've got to teach them the soft skills for life. You've got to teach them how to be emotionally intelligent. You've got to teach them how to cook, how to clean, how to wash a jumper, how to change a spark plug, how to change a car wheel. God knows I still don't know how to do that. But, you know, I need people to think broader. So that approach of, you know, you better get your thumb out and work harder is absolutely not going to work. It's going to be deemed as criticism. It's going to lower a child's self-esteem. And what we need to do more than anything is be supportive based on our child, based on their needs. And we may always have to have realistic expectations. So does that answer make any sense?
Oh, totally. Totally. I have a question. With all these positive parenting skills and tips that you've given us, how can we apply this as in everyday life as an adult?
Oh, God, that's a good question. Praise your husband or wife. Get a little golden book, write in it 5 praises every day. Make sure you are descriptively praising your partner and not berating them for not taking out the rubbish. So in everyday life, we can all benefit from acknowledging what others around us are doing and getting right. So the skill of descriptive praise applies to everyone, because everyone needs to know they're doing a good job, and they need to be told why they're doing a good job. So I would say there's 3 elements to positive parenting. One is being positive, which we've discussed in terms of descriptive praise. The second thing parents need to do is be firm and have rules and boundaries. And of course, in everyday life, things work smoothly because we follow rules, don't we?
Sure.
So in home life, you need to be really clear about your values. And once you're clear about your values, just create some rules. Because if you don't have rules, you'll have anarchy in the house. And I would say the third positive parenting technique is to be consistent. Oh, that's really hard. But what am I talking about here? Try and have a united front with whoever is helping you at home with the kids.
Yes, that's so true.
So if you are husband and wife or partners parenting, you know, sit down and work out what's important to you. Is it important that your 11-year-old gets to bed at a certain time and gets so many hours sleep? Is it important to you that, you know, he only has so many hours a day on Fortnite or whatever game he's using? Is it important to you that there's a drop zone for gadgets and screens don't come into the bedroom because they interfere with sleep hygiene? So in every area of your life, you need to be clear on what your values are. And that's no different from what we as adults do in everyday life too. We're all clear about our values and our rules, and we follow the rules. So I, again, encourage all parents to be really clear about what the boundaries are and what the rules are in their own home.
I have to tell you, with mommy and daddy, there's times when, of course, every child will say, Dad, I want to go do X, Y, Z. And Dad says, that child then turns around and goes to Mom. Mom and Dad have to be on the same playing field. And that's regardless whether Mom and Dad are together or Mom and Dad are co-parenting.
And if you don't have that, I can promise you this, your child is hardwired to get his or her needs met.
Yes.
And if one parent doesn't meet their needs and another will, then I'm not saying they're manipulative, but they will just do everything to get their needs met. And so it's really, really unhelpful if as parents we're not clear on our values, because it just leads to confusion.
Elaine, we're about to wrap up, but I wanted to mention, because I have two final questions. One is going to be easy. The second to last one is going to be not so easy, because I don't want to say it's a taboo question, but for a lot of parents, and you see it in public, whether I'm at my son's football game or I'm at my daughter's volleyball game, and you see when a child, how do parents cope when their child acts out in public? And that child could be 3 years old, 13 years old, or above.
Carry on.
No, and a lot of times I see parents, every parent is acting differently in regards to if their child is disrespectful or just out of control. And you can kind of get a glimpse into that parent's household of how that household is run. Or at least that's the stereotype that you see, because, you take a bite-sized portion by taking a quick 30-second look and saying, okay, let's see how this parent deals with the situation.
So all of us will have had what I call LPMs, low parenting moments, where our children act out in public or even in the home, they're just disrespectful to us. And I would say the first thing to do is do not punish. Do not be that authoritarian parenting, berating, punishing, embarrassing, because that will lead to rebellion and resentment. So I just want to give you a couple of really easy examples. Let's say that you mentioned your child was disrespectful to you. What would your son say to you, Ted? Just make up an example.
Make up an example. Let's say I told him, okay, it's time to turn off the Xbox. You know what? You're not going to tell me what to do. I'm playing this game now, and you can go back to whatever you were doing.
So that's all tied up with rules. If you're clear on your rules, we shouldn't have to remind him about turning off the Xbox, because he should know the rule. And every time you remind him, he is going to be triggered. So my question to you is, what is the rule about the Xbox and when he needs to turn it off?
Personally, my rule would be we're going to take the rule is how long. Well, it's more of a time limit. You're going to play from 3 to 5.
Does he know that?
Well, for my instance, yes. My son knows that when you're going on here, there's a specific timer that's enabled that you're going to play this game this long, and this is that's going to allow you to relax, so that at 5 p.m. now you're going to start your homework.
Okay. When it comes to 5 p.m. and he does on occasion turn the Xbox off, what do you say to him?
Great job. I'm glad that you're doing the right thing. Let's go on upstairs. Let's get started with math homework. If you need any assistance, I'm right here for you.
So if he does turn off the Xbox, I do want you to praise him, but I want you to praise him for the quality it takes to turn the Xbox off. And that quality has to be self-control. So we need to be really descriptive. So what often happens, and it may not be your scenario, Ted, so forgive me, but what often happens is that we have a rule that the Xbox needs to be turned off. When the kid turns it off, we actually don't notice. We just say, hey, good job, well done. And we don't descriptively praise. But when he doesn't turn it off, we give it lots of attention and time.
Yes, we do.
So there's a lot here about teaching and training him into good habits. And it's about being really clear on the rules so that we never need to have to remind him because the rules are written down and he knows them. Every time we remind him about the rules, it's going to trigger a response. But let me just look at a simple example of a child being disrespectful to you. Get lost. Yeah? Get lost. Get out of my space.
Mm-hmm.
I would always do something called an action replay or a take two. So with a little toddler who says, Mummy, I want juice now. And Mummy says something like, oh, gosh, you're not going to get juice unless you remember your please and thank yous. Where's your please and thank yous? Instead, we'll just say, hey, looks to me as if you forgot some of those magic words. Why don't we replay the scene and do an action replay? Let's do a take two. What was it you wanted to say to me, Annie? Oh, please, could I have juice, Mummy? Oh, that's so much better. What would you like, apple or orange? So we just give the child an opportunity to get it right without falling into a manhole and punishing. There's no need to punish when a child forgets their manners. We just need to get them to do it again. Now, with a teenager who says get lost, I'll do a bit of emotion coaching with them, and I'll say, whoa, 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 whoa. For you to tell me to get lost, you must be really angry about something. But you know what? I'm just going to invite you to replay that, because when you speak to me like that, I've got to tell you I feel disrespected. And when I feel disrespected, it's very unlikely that this conversation is going to go far. So, honey, let's just press a pause button. Let's replay the scene. And what was it you wanted to tell me? Because when you speak to me in a nice voice, I promise you, I will listen. And so it's a very simple technique called an action replay, which gives the child or the teen the opportunity to get it right without us both falling in a manhole and getting cross and berating and scolding. And it works brilliantly even on my 23-year-old still.
I love it. I got to tell you,
yeah?
I've been gleaning, and I'm going to tell you, this is going to be a great interview because there's so many that you're dropping.
Yeah.
They're like little nuggets that you're dropping on.
Thank you.
Just the conversation, the level of respect, dealing with situations that might not be as comfortable, because I've seen a situation where my daughter was at a volleyball game, and one of her teammates says to her parent walks in the door and was like, where's my smoothie? Did you get it? And I just turned and looked at the parent and was like, oh, my. And the parent just handed her the smoothie, and I just, immediately, Elaine, in my mind, I said, okay, that's a different type of relationship. And as my daughter and I were driving home from the game, and I said, did you see that interaction? She said, yeah, I saw that. And I said, well, do you think that, point out to me, what do you think that was right, what was wrong, and where the level of respect ended, and if it could even be restarted. And she mentioned, Dad, I would never talk to you that way. I would never talk to you.
Good for you. Good for her. Well, what it shows in that other relationship between parent and child is that the child is in charge and the parent is a little frightened. So in that example, I would just be turning to the teen and going, hey, do you know what? I've got to tell you that language just doesn't work for me just now. I'm just going to invite you to replay the scene. I know you want your juice. I'm more than happy to give you your smoothie, but I just need you to talk to me in a way where I feel a little more respected. Just try it again. And for our son, we call it a play it again, Sam. Sam, play that one again. that didn't work for me. I'm not going to listen when you talk to me like that, but you know what? Play it again. And it's a way of not delving into the parenting manhole. It's a way of getting getting them to answer you in a respectful tone of voice, but without making the most enormous deal of it. And we could go on forever looking at emotion coaching and what's behind that behavior. But look, in the book, there's a whole load of, even if you have not got a child who's different, I promise you there's a little section at the end of each chapter that gives you a lovely synopsis written by my business partner, who is my parenting coach, about what to do in all difficult situations, how to let kids learn from their mistakes, how to build up self-esteem, how to teach emotional intelligence, how to get them happy, creative, motivated learners. So there's something there for everyone.
Oh, my goodness. We're speaking with Elaine Halligan, author of My Child's Different. Elaine, as we wrap up, questions about social media. What are the best ways, if our listeners to this show, what are the best ways to get in contact with you, follow some of your writings? Is there a website that you would like to promote, or a Twitter handle, or Facebook, or...
Well, that's really kind of you to ask. We do have a website called theparentpractice.com. So it's www.theparentpractice.com, and it's based in London. And you can follow us on Twitter and on Facebook using the handle The Parent Practice. And come and join the conversation. We speak to people all over the world, parents all over the world, even though we're based in London. And if you're interested in the book, I guess the best point of call is probably Amazon.com.
That's excellent. I know you're frequently quoted in the media, and you've appeared, Sky News, BBC World News, BBC Local Radio. But the mission that you have to help parents find the holy grail of parenting and keeping calm and bringing out the best in their children.
Absolutely.
You have such a gift, Elaine.
Oh,
Ted,
that's so kind of you.
Well, thank you so much for just taking out the time today to join us. When out with your team, I want to say a big thank you to your team, Ms. Sharon Fornell from Fin Partners, who I work with constantly, played a big part in getting us connected. I will be
team effort, Ted, isn't it? It's a team effort.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's all the people behind the scenes that help us to connect, because you're in the UK, we're in the US, we're late night parents, you are the parent, the parent practice, and it's so wonderful to speak with you today.
Well, I wish you and your family, your 11-year-old and 17-year-old, lots of happy days and lots of love and support to all of you.
All the best to you, your husband, and give Sam a big hello to me. And I hope we shall speak in the future, and I will purchase your book. Thank you.
Oh, bless you.
All right. Thank you.